Hi everyone, I hope we're all doing well. Welcome back to my channel. I am your favorite YouTuber, coach, and course creator, and today we're going to be talking about the most insane Neville Goddard success stories that are written all over his books. But before we get into it, you are more than welcome to subscribe. On this channel I talk about all things law of assumption, so if that sounds good, I would love to have you here. If you would like 1,000+ curated subliminals sent directly to your email, click the very first link in the description box down below. It literally took me 3 years to curate this. I wanted to keep it a secret forever. It's my own personal subliminal playlist, but now I have shared it with those that are interested, and the feedback has been amazing. So that is in the link in the description box down below, the very first link. And if you would like to sign up for one-on-one coaching with me or VIP intensive coaching, that will also be in the description box down below, or you can simply go on ritakaminsky.com/coaching. The first one is when Neville Goddard manifests moving back to Barbados during World War II. This isn't the original Barbados story, it's another story. Basically, it was World War II and Neville was living in New York, and he was like, screw this, I want to live in Barbados with my family. Traveling was impossible because everything went to the war effort. You needed military clearance to travel, and civilians couldn't just up and leave. So Neville Goddard did sats every single night, and he felt the warm air on his skin in Barbados. He knew that he was in Barbados when he was sleeping. He imagined himself in Barbados, and he was hearing the sounds of home as he was falling asleep. Within a few days, so this literally happened within a few days, a lady called him and offered him a ship ticket to go to Barbados. He was literally given no explanation as to why she was giving him the ticket, but she gave it to him and he went to Barbados. While he was on the ship, he discovered it was a military vessel. So if that woman didn't call him to give him that pass, there would have been no way of him getting to Barbados. Circumstances do not matter. This man literally manifested during World War II to go to another country when it was deemed impossible. We're talking literal government bureaucracy and wartime logistics, like crazy circumstances, and it didn't matter because he used sats. If his subconscious mind could do that, your subconscious mind could manifest you your SP or money. Another success story is the You Are in Barbados story by Abdullah, but I feel like I've talked that story to death, so this will be a card up above of me talking in detail about it, where I actually read it. But that is super inspiring too, but I feel like we need new ones. Okay, number 3 is his brother's immigration story. This is where he changed the impossible, even when immigration laws told him it wasn't possible, or, you know, the law forbade it. Neville's brother Victor wanted to travel to New York from Barbados, but his visa denied it each time. The immigration laws were really strict, as you can imagine. Any logical way of him getting there would be denied, and it would be impossible because he didn't have an American citizenship and he didn't have an American visa. He literally just had a Barbados citizenship. Neville imagined his brother already being in New York. He'd fall asleep seeing his brother Victor, so he would look at his brother in first person. Everything is first person. First person just means that Neville is looking through his own perspective, not through third person. Both are correct, it's fine, but Neville liked first person. So then he would see him and Victor shaking hands and then hearing his brother's voice saying, I made it. He persisted in this every single day for weeks. From a lot of his success stories that I've read, it's like 3 weeks, and that's like max, where it would happen either to him or to his students around about 3 weeks. He went to sleep with that vision in his mind every single day without letting up, while his brother just kept on getting rejected because he kept on trying multiple times and the government was saying no. Imagine the government saying no, and you're in bed every single night envisioning this image that your brother is actually in fact in America. Then all of a sudden, the immigration laws changed. Congress passed a new legislation that allowed people from the British West Indies to enter the United States. Victor qualified for that law and got his visa immediately. The thing is that Neville Goddard didn't find a loophole. He literally manifested the entire law to change within weeks. When you assume something, reality recognizes itself to match. No matter what, no matter how hard and impenetrable you think that your 3D is, it will change no matter what. Okay, so number 4 is from a student. The I remember when technique, the woman manifesting her wealth. This is a good one. So a woman was broke and she was in debt, and she started repeating, I remember when I was poor, as though her current poverty was in the past. She'd say casually, I remember when I didn't have money for groceries. I remember when I didn't even have money for rent. So this woman was affirming. Neville literally says in his success stories that affirming works. Within a couple of months, all of her financial situations turned around. Money came from unexpected sources, opportunities started arising, and debts were getting completely resolved. She didn't visualize or do sats, she just spoke from the end. She spoke as the version of her who already is not poor. The I remember when affirmation is great because it pulls you out of the state that you're in right now. This proves that visualization and sats is not the only way to manifest. Neville showed a success story where this woman was affirming and it happened. You just speak naturally, a sentence that implies that you have something, and it manifests. Okay, so the next one is about a guy wanting to get a promotion as a sales manager at the company that he was working for. There were literally 50 other people competing against him, and they were way more qualified for the position. He did sats every single night. He imagined his boss shaking his hand and saying, congratulations, you're our new sales manager, over and over and over again, and he would loop that scene consistently until he fell asleep. He felt relief and pride and excitement for having gotten that promotion. So literally after a couple of weeks, his boss called him into his office and he shook his hand and said, congratulations, you're the new sales manager, exactly how he envisioned it in sats. The thing is that the exact thing that he was visualizing came to fruition. Okay, so I actually want to read the rest with y'all. So grab yourself a tea and let's read some of these because they really lit up a fire under my ass. This is all from the Law and Promise. Some 15 years ago, Mrs. M and I purchased a lot, which we built a 2-story building housing our office and living area. We left ample space on the lot for an apartment building, if and when our finances would permit. All those years we were busy paying off our mortgage, and at the end of time had no money for the additional building we still desired so much. It was true that we had an ample savings account which meant security for our business, but to use any part of it for a new building would be to jeopardize that security. But now your teaching awakened a new concept, boldly telling us we could have what we most desired through the controlled use of our imagination, that realizing a desire was made more convincing without money. We decided to put it to the test, to forget about money and concentrate our attention on the thing we desired most on this world, the new apartment building. With this principle in mind, we mentally constructed the new building as we wanted, actually drawing physical plans so we could better formulate our mental picture of the completed structure, never forgetting to think from the end. In our case, the completed occupied building. We took many imaginative trips through our apartment house, renting the units to imaginary tenants, examining in detail every room and enjoying the feeling of pride as friends offered congratulations on the unique planning. We brought into our imaginal scene one friend in particular, I should call her Mrs. X, a lady we had not seen for some time as she had given us up socially, believing us a bit peculiar in our new way of thinking. In our imaginal scene, we took her through the building and asked her how she liked it. Hearing her voice distinctly, we had her reply, "Doctor, I think it's beautiful." One day while talking together of our apartment, my wife mentioned a contractor who had constructed several apartment houses in our neighborhood. We knew of him only by the name that appeared on signs adjacent to the buildings under construction. But realizing if we were living in the end, we would not be looking for a contractor, we promptly forgot this angle. Continuing these periods of daily imagining for several weeks, we both felt we were now fused with our desire and had successfully been living in the end. Do you see how they literally actively sought against taking action in the 3D, even when they had some sort of an opportunity to? One day, a stranger entered our office and identified himself as the contractor whose name my wife had mentioned weeks before. In an apologetic manner, he said, "I don't know why I stopped here. I normally don't go to see people, but rather people come to see me." He explained that he passed our office often and had wondered why there wasn't an apartment building on the corner lot. We assured him we would like very much to have such a building there, but that we had no money to put into the project, not even a few $100s it would take for plans. Our negative response did not faze him, and seemingly compelled, he began to figure and devise ways and means to carry out the job unasked and unencouraged by us. Forgetting the incident, we were quite startled when a few days later this man called, informing us that plans were completed and that the proposed building would cost us $30,000. We thanked him politely and did absolutely nothing. We knew we had been living imaginatively in the end of a completed building, and that imagination would assemble that building perfectly without any outside assistance from us. Do you see how they still are saying no, even though the 3D is like, cool, you got your thing, and they're like, no, we're not settling, we're not dropping 30 bands for this apartment building. So we were not surprised when the contractor called again the next day to say he had found a set of blueprints in his files that fitted our needs perfectly with few altercations. See, if you guys get into the state of the wish fulfilled correctly, your 3D is going to be chasing you down. This, we were informed, would save us the architect's fee for new plans. We thanked him again and still did nothing. I love this. Logical thinkers would insist that such negative response from prospective customers would completely end the matter. Instead, 2 days later, the contractor again called with the news that he had located a finance company willing to cover the necessary loan with the exception of a few $1,000s. It sounds incredible, but we still did nothing, not even a couple $1,000s. They were like, no, I know the power of my subconscious mind. For remember, to us this building was completed and rented, and in our imagination we had not put one penny into its construction. The balance of this tale reads like a sequel to Alice in Wonderland, for the contractor came to our office the next day and said, as though presenting us with a gift, "You people are going to have the new building anyways. I've decided to finance the new balance of the loan myself." If it takes one person to just get this little idea to aid you in your manifestation, they will literally think that it's their idea. "You people are going to have the new building anyway. I've decided to finance the balance of the loan myself. If this is agreeable, I'll have my lawyers draw up papers and you can pay me back out of the net profits from rentals." This time we did do something. We signed the papers and construction began immediately. Most of the apartment units were rented before final completion and all but one occupied the day of completion. We were so thrilled by the seemingly miraculous events of the past few months that for a while we didn't understand this seeming flaw in our imaginal picture. But knowing what we had already accomplished through the power of imagining, we immediately conceived another imaginal scene, and in it this time, instead of showing the party through the unit and hearing the words, "we'll take it," we ourselves in imagination visited tenants who already moved into the apartment. We allowed them to show us through the rooms and heard their pleased and satisfied comments. 3 days later, that apartment was rented. See, so it was like 1% of the manifestation didn't come to fruition, where they didn't get absolutely 100% of the tenants. It was like every single room was filled except for just one. So they just went back into imagination and fixed it. Meaning persist. Persist until you get the full manifestation. and don't settle. Our original imaginary drama had objectified itself in every detail save one, and that one became a reality when 1 month later our friend Mrs. X surprised us with a long overdue visit, expressing her desire to see our new building. Gladly we took her through, and at the end of the tour heard her speak the line we had heard in our imagination so many weeks before, as with emphasis on each word. She said, "Doctor, I think it's beautiful." Our dreams of 15 years were realized, and we know now that it could have been realized at any time within those 15 years if we had known the secret of imagining and how to live in the end of desire. But now it was realized our one big desire was objectified, and we did not put 1 penny or 1 action, except for signing the papers, of our own money or action into it. No action required. Don't settle until you see 100%. If you don't see 100%, keep visualizing in your mind by using sats or affirming. Okay, next. As my story begins, at the age of 19, I was a mildly successful dancing teacher and continued in this static state for almost 5 years. At the end of this time, I met a young lady who talked me into attending your lectures. My thought, upon hearing you say imagining creates reality, assumption creates reality, was that the entire idea was ridiculous. However, I decided to accept your challenge and disprove your thesis. I bought your book Out of This World and read it many times. Still unconvinced, I set myself a rather ambitious goal. My present position was an instructor with the Arthur Murray Dance Studio, and my goal was to own a franchise and be boss of an Arthur Murray studio myself. This seemed the most unlikely thing in the world, as franchises were extremely difficult to secure, but on top of this fact, I was completely without the necessary funds to begin such an operation. Nevertheless, I assumed the feeling of my wish fulfilled as night after night in my imagination I went to sleep managing my own studio. 3 weeks later, a friend called me from Reno, Nevada. He had the Murray studio there and said it was too much for him to cope with alone. He offered me a partnership, and I was delighted, so delighted in fact that I hastened to Reno on borrowed money and promptly forgot all about you and your story of imagination. My partner and I worked hard and were very successful, but after a year I was still not satisfied. I wanted more. I began thinking of ways and means to get another studio. All my efforts failed. One night as I retired, I was restless and decided to read. As I looked through my collection of books, I noticed your slender volume Out of This World. I thought of the silly nonsense I had gone through 1 year ago before getting my own studio. Getting my own studio. The words in my mind electrified me. I reread the book that night, and later in my imagination, I heard my superior praise the good job we had done in Reno and suggest we acquire a second studio, as he had a second location ready for us if we desired to expand. So he heard his voice. I enacted this imaginal scene nightly without fail. 3 weeks from the first night of my imaginal drama, it materialized, almost word for word. My partner accepted the new studio in Bakersfield, and I had the Reno studio alone. Now I was convinced of the truth of your teachings, and never again will I forget. Now I wanted to share this wonderful knowledge of imaginal power with my staff. I tried to tell them of the marvels they could accomplish, but I was unable to reach many, although one fantastic incident resulted from my efforts to tell the story. A young teacher told me he believed my story, but said it would have probably happened anyway in time. He insisted the entire story was nonsense, but stated that if I could tell him something of an incredible nature that would actually happen and which he could witness, then he would believe. I accepted his challenge and conceived a truly fantastic test. The Reno studio is the most insignificant of the entire Murray system because of the small population count of the city itself. There are over 300 Murray studios in the country, with much larger populations, therefore providing greater possibilities to draw from. So my test was this. I told the teacher that within the next 3 months, at the time of a national dance convention, the little Reno studio would be the most foremost topic of conversation at that convention. He calmly stated this was quite impossible. That night when I retired, I felt myself standing before a tremendous audience. I was speaking on creative imagining and felt the nervousness of being before such a vast audience, but I also felt the wonderful sensation of audience acceptance. I heard the roar of applause, and as I left the stage, I saw Mr. Murray himself come forward and shake my hand. I reenacted this drama night after night, it began to take on the terms of reality, and I knew I had done it again. My imaginal drama materialized down to the very last detail. My little Reno studio was the talk of the convention, and I did appear on that stage just as I had done in my imagination. But even after the unbelievable but actual happening, the young teacher who threw me the challenge remained unconvinced. He said it all happened too naturally. That's how it always is. It looks like it's too natural. It looks like, oh, it would have happened anyways because of this, and people try to give excuses. No, he literally imagined the whole thing down to the very last detail, and he was sure it would have happened anyways. This is the kind of people that comment under my videos that the success stories under my videos are bots. I did not mind his attitude because his challenge had given me another opportunity to prove, at least to myself, that imagining does create reality. From that time on, I continued with my ambition to own the largest Arthur Murray dance studio in the world. Night after night, in my imagination, I heard myself accepting a studio franchise for a great city. So this person uses basically the telephone technique, but he's using and listening to someone else's voice. He's not using visualization. He's not affirming. I heard myself accepting a studio franchise for a great city. Within 3 weeks, Mr. Murray called me and offered a studio in a city of 1.5 million people. It is now my goal to make my studio the greatest and biggest in the entire system, and of course I know it will be done through my imagination. Sats is crazy, powerful, scary stuff, guys. Check out my video here on how I did it. I manifested 100,000 subscribers in 6 weeks. Little SP story for ya. Last August, while on a blind date, I met the man I wanted to marry. This happens sometimes, and it happened to me. He was everything I had ever thought of as desirable in a husband. 2 days after this enchanted evening, it was necessary for me to change my place of residence because of my work, and that same week the mutual friend who had introduced me to this man moved away from the city. I realized that the man I had met probably didn't know of my new address, and frankly, I was not sure he knew my name. After your last lecture, I spoke to you of this situation. Although I had plenty of other dates, I could not forget this one man. Your lecture was based on revising our day, and after speaking to you, I determined to revise my day every day. You can revise as well. There is not one specific way that you can do this, but this falls under the category of revising in Sats. Before going to sleep that night, I felt I was in a different bed in my own home as a married woman, and not as a single working girl sharing an apartment with 3 other girls. I twisted an imaginary wedding band on my imaginary left hand, saying over and over to myself, "This is wonderful. I really am Mrs. J.E.'s." And I fell asleep in what was, a moment before, a waking dream. So she was affirming as well while revising, and knowing that she's sleeping in another bed, in her bed with her husband. I repeated this imaginary scene for 1 month, night after night. The first week in October, he found me. On our second date, I knew my dreams were rightly placed. Your teaching tells us to live in the end of our desire until that desire becomes fact. So although I did not know how he felt toward me, I continued night after night, living in the feeling of my dream realized, even during the second day after that. The results: in November, he proposed. In January, we announced our engagement, and the following May, we were married. The loveliest part of it all, however, is that I am happier than I ever dreamed possible, and I know in my heart he is too. That's the beauty of manifestation. The sweetest feeling is you thinking you're going to be so happy with your manifestation, and then you get it and you're like, holy crap, I could not even fathom how happy I would be with this, and I'm like 100 times happier, like when my YouTube blew up. In my audience sat a man who, by his confession, was broke. He had read the same book, but he suddenly realized he had done nothing with the use of his imagination to solve his financial problem. He decided he would try to imagine himself as the winner of the 510 pool at Caliente racetrack. In his words, in this pool, one attempts to pick winners in the 5th through the 10th races. So this is what I did in my imagination. I stood sorting my tickets and feeling as I did so that I had each of the 6 winners. I enacted the scene over and over in my imagination until I actually felt goose pimples. I hate that word, goose pimples. Goosebumps. Then I saw the cashier giving me a large sum of money, which I placed beneath my imaginary shirt. This was my entire imaginal drama, and for 3 weeks, night after night, I enacted this scene and I fell asleep in the action. After 3 weeks, I traveled physically to the Caliente racetrack, and on that day, every detail of my imaginative play was actually realized. The only change in the scene was that the cashier gave me a check for a total of $84,000 instead of currency. We love that. This is a house story. So 2 months and 4 or 5 real estate brokers later, my husband had given up on the sale of our house. At this point, I had convinced myself I now wanted the change. So for 4 nights in my imagination, I went to sleep in the kind of home I would like to own. On the 5th day, a stranger just happened to be looking for a house in the hills. He walked through once and said, "I'll buy it." We listed our requirements with every agent, and each one of them without exception informed us we were both mad. It was entirely impossible, they said, to find an older home of English style with 2 separate living rooms, separate apartments, a library, and built on a flat knoll. When we told them the price we would pay for this house, they just looked sad. But I knew there was such a house because my imagination had been sleeping in it, and if I am my imagination, then I had been sleeping in it. So after being told that the owner wouldn't split or sell the property, that night in my imagination, I stood on that dining room balcony and looked down at my husband standing by the fireplace, because they found a perfect home on, from memory, I believe, King Street. This on my iPad is like a condensed version, but yeah, they go and check out the house and like it's absolutely perfect and she's in love and it's like exactly what she saw in her imagination, and it was actually on her favorite street. So then after that, they were like, there's no way this owner is going to split or sell the property. Like, absolutely no way. That it's this like old woman who has always been living there her entire life. That night in my imagination, I stood on that dining room balcony and looked down at my husband standing by the fireplace. He looked up at me and said, "Well, honey, how do you like our new home?" And I said, "I love it." And then I fell asleep. The next day, the agent, in an unbelieving voice, informed me that we had just purchased a house. The owner had split the property right down the middle, giving us the house and the acre it stood on for the price we offered. Because basically it was like this huge like 2-acre lot with like 2 houses in between it. Like it was one lot, but it had 2 huge houses. Like 1 acre had one house, 1 acre had the other house. So the owner agreed to split in the middle for the price that they wanted. You don't settle, you just do sats, you live in the end, or you affirm until it comes, and it's going to come. Just watch this video again when you're doubting, and affirm, and do sats, and listen to subliminals. Those are my 3 top pillars. I will talk about that in another video. But yeah. Okay guys, so that was all for today. I know this is the best YouTube video that you have ever watched, and I manifest that you are a master manifester. Manifesting is so easy for you and you fully understand law of assumption. Please make sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel. It would mean the whole world to me, and I will see you in the next video. Bye everyone. Mwah, 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 mwah.